What's up, fam? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Father Brown and the bell rang too late. Hit me up. What made you smile today? And where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready, because nothing in Whispers in the Fog is ever what it seems. Chapter 1. The Guest Who Never Took Tea. The heavy oak door of the study thudded against the wall with a finality that echoed like a funeral bell, drowning out the cheerful clatter of teacups and laughter that filled the drawing room just beyond. As Father Brown stepped into the dimly lit corridor, the whiff of scorched tea leaves mingling with the scent of rain-soaked earth heralded a storm beyond the small, cozy village of St. Mary's. It was a storm that had heralded something far worse: death. He caught a glimpse of the gas lamp flickering in the study, a paltry flame against the encroaching shadows, as if reluctant to illuminate the horror that lurked within. Instinctively, he turned to a pair of astonished faces peering wide-eyed from the drawing room. Lady Agnes, her delicate features generally suffused with genteel warmth, now shrouded in ghastly pallor, and her son, Julian, who was frozen, mouth agape, as if the breath had been snatched from his lungs. "Father, you mustn't!" Lady Agnes's voice was a whisper cut with thunder, her eyes pleading, a thousand unspoken feelings flickering behind her poised facade, now crumbling like autumn leaves. Ignoring her warning, Father Brown pushed the door further ajar and stepped inside, his heart thumping like a church bell. There lay Sir Edwin, the village's renowned benefactor, and a towering figure of genteel society, sprawled across the rich Turkish rug, the deep crimson of his blood pooling dramatically around him. His thin fingers clutched at a blood-stained letter, the faint crescent of his wedding band, glinting cruelly in the half-light. The locked study. How had the killer managed to escape? A fleeting thought skimmed through his mind, but was quickly lost in the gravity of the scene before him. "Father, I assure you, Julian was with me. We were sampling the Earl Grey." Lady Agnes's voice cracked as she tried to assert an alibi that felt too feeble against gravity of the murder. Julian's face mirrored his mother's disbelief, but Father Brown scrutinized the tableau before him, widening his perceptions and preparing for elucidation. "Indeed, my lady," he replied, his voice hushed, steady as the storm rattling the window panes. "But let us not forget that the art of tea drinking can be as deceptive as the tea leaf itself." He turned his attentions to the letter still gripped in Sir Edwin's lifeless hand, noticing peculiarities in its creased surface. There are no signs of struggle, yet this letter, its words appear incomplete. As he carefully extracted it from the dead man's fingers, he noticed a curious, understated elegance in the flawed handwriting, a familiar flourish, but jumbled in its urgency. "What does it say?" Julian's voice trembled. He was drowning in the rising tide of suspicion and fear. "Dear Sir Edwin, my patience is running thin. A steer away from civility, I would wager." Father Brown raised an eyebrow, eyes darting around the study, which adorned deep mahogany and bookshelves lined with leather-bound tomes that smelled of dust and lost histories. To be written in such a state of haste implies something most desperate, don't you think? Lady Agnes gasped, her complexion flashing a vivid shade of green, making Father Brown consider her vehement worry could very well be fright for herself. "It's better not to think on it, Father," she said, the tremor in her voice revealing a hint of anger burrowed beneath her good breeding. "You may be well-intentioned, But our village does not mirror the tales of fiction. Edwin made enemies among the wicked. His charitable ventures upset the natural order, I assure you. At that very moment, a floorboard creaked sharply behind him, and he turned sharply to see a slouching figure appear in the doorway, Mr. Thompson, the bewildered village constable, whose usually unflappable manner seemed tattered and torn. "Oh, I beg your pardon, father," he stammered, his eyes darting to the scene at hand. "But there's been a disturbance outside. Best come quick." "Outside?" The query slipped from Father Brown's lips before he could restrain it. Here? He wasn't only concerned about supernatural wonders that had entered the hallowed walls of Lady Agnes's home. There lurked an urgency pulling at the corners of his mind, a new thread that might weave through this tangled fabric of horror. At that moment, just as Father Brown turned toward the door, he caught sight of something glinting amidst the shadows of Sir Edwin's desk. A small object, almost too discreet to notice. A pair of spectacles, half buried under a pile of unmarred correspondence. Picking them up, he inspected their sharp lenses, wondering how even their polished form could harbor such murky depths. "Father?" Lady Agnes's voice looped back to his ear, trembling with an urgency that sent a chill over his spine. "What is it? What have you found?" Before he could answer, a loud crack of thunder burst overhead, sending shards of light scattering through the room. The tension thickened, like the storm gathering. Outside, as they all noted the time that had slipped away. "Are we all accounted for?" Father Brown's eye glinted with unspoken questions, noticing Julian's face grow more drawn, his shallow breaths betraying a mounting anxiety. But before any could respond, another sound emerged from beyond the study, a scream, piercing through the thunder, high and terrified, echoing against the stone walls. Without a moment's thought, Father Brown was racing towards the door, heart stilled, yet pounding. What fresh terror awaited them outside? The reveal of a murderer amongst their midst, or a dark, sinister truth lurking more grotesquely than the death of a man? As he stepped into the blinding light of accusations, he heard her voice resonate in the air, a chilling, plaintive cry. "The tea! Someone has spilled the tea!" Father Brown froze. The tea, untasted, undrunk. It was more than a mere beverage. It was symptomatic of a deeper unrest. Was it mere coincidence or a scarlet thread woven tighter still? It was then that he realized the importance of a treachery harbored with every sip, as all at once everything began to unravel, and the scent of deceit, brewed strong and dark, shimmered just beyond grasp. Chapter 2. A Confession Tell. A crack of thunder struck with a ferocity that vibrated through the damp air, the pitch of the storm crescendoing as Father Brown emerged into the night. The chaos beyond the study door swirled in frenetic confusion. The sight that met him, a disheveled villager, eyes wide and wild, lips quivering like a fragile leaf, was the stuff of nightmares. The cry for help shattered the tension that hung thick as the rain-soaked fog, enveloping the village in an air of palpable dread. "Father Brown," the man gasped, his voice rising with each syllable like the storm itself. "You must come. I saw it. I saw everything." He clutched at the collar of his coat, fingers trembling uncontrollably as the rain dribbled from his chin, carving rivulets down, like the blood that pooled by Sir Edwin, now forever silenced. "Calm yourself, Thomas," Father Brown urged, his voice steady, yet gravelled with urgency as he observed the man before him. "What have you seen?" The villager fell to his knees, breathless, his confession drenching the ground in the wake of his hysteria. I was I was just beyond the hedge, Father. Listening as I always do, I heard them argue. The tone was dreadful, as if words could snap like brittle twigs. And then a shadow crossed the window, and, he faltered, the horror gripping him as he glanced back toward the house. Father Brown stepped closer, the air around them thick with rain and remorse, oblivious to the swell of thunder in the distance. What did you see, Thomas? Speak plainly. Did you see Sir Edwin's attacker? Shadows. They moved as if cloaked by the fog. He stammered, skin clammy and pale. Then it was over. The sound was sharp, a cracking of glass. Or was it wood? I can't say. I can only... He gripped Father Brown's robes, desperation painting his features. I saw him fall. Sir Edwin? The priest's gaze pierced through the man's writhing emotions, sensing an untruth murmur beneath the trembling confession. You saw Sir Edwin fall? And who, or what, did you see? Thomas clutched at his head, strands of hair plastered against his forehead, and in the flickering gaslight gleaming from behind him, Father Brown caught the reflection of something glinting, a small silver object, half concealed in the crook of the villager's clenched fist. No one. It all happened so quickly, just a blur moving away. Father Brown's eyes narrowed as the storm wrapped them in a cloak of darkness. You forget, my friend. Even in the shadows, one can discern shapes. You saw someone. The absence of a face does not erase their presence. Reflect on your confession, Thomas. What more do you hide? Thomas flinched, but a flicker of something, fear or guilt, crossed his features before he finally relented. The tension released from his shoulders like steam from a kettle. I swear, Father, I've seen things. A woman by the window, her face pale like death. When she turned, it was as if the shadows swallowed her whole. I thought it was a sign. They haunt me. A woman, Father Brown repeated, his brow furrowing. But you mentioned only shadows. Was this figure mere fancy, or did you see her clearly? I've seen her before, Thomas stammered, eyes darting silly-like in the pouring rain. Upon the road and in the market, always just out of reach. Perhaps it was my guilt, feeling the weight of every scraped coin, but I'm telling you, I felt something sinister, as if death itself were lurking near. Your guilt? Father? Brown bore into the villager with a steady gaze, noting the ripple of fear almost tangible in the air. You hold more than dread. Absolution comes with truth. Out of the corner of his eye, Father Brown caught the telltale flicker of movement, a shadowy figure darting into the tree line far beyond the garden, a wraith slipping through the heavy curtain of rain. The storm and the glimmer of silver clutched in Thomas's hand tightened around the truth father. Brown's sense stifled beneath a maelstrom of deceit. Someone approached, he uttered softly, chin tilted, almost vexingly so, in the pursuit of clarity. Did you see that? They turned away from us, away from the light. Just then, the wind howled, the leaves whipping about like silent sentinels, bearing witness to the unfolding chaos. Confusion knotted at Thomas's brow, fear warping his already trembling confessions. Father, I swear, that woman she is a ghost. Perhaps she... Enough! Father Brown cut in, his voice a sharp blade cutting through the storm. Fear can cloud reason, Thomas. It is this fear that may clutch at your heart, fog your vision, and unearth hidden truths. Yet heartbreak breeds despair, and despair often begets guilt. Guilt, Thomas stared, panic bursting from a fissure in his demeanor. What have I to do with this crime? You can't think I... he stammered, wild-eyed. Yet it is guilt that might lead a man to dampen the truths that swirl like the storm above us. Thomas, what burden do you carry? Father. Brown's voice softened, still laced with urgency as he sought the core of the man's own torment. Before Thomas could respond, a furious clap of thunder cracked overhead. The house of Lady Agnes erupted in light. Shouting voices cascaded through the air like the rumble of distant artillery, a clamour beguiling the quiet village. Father Brown turned instinctively to the doorway, the dread weighing upon him as he sensed the shadow on the edge of the wood, a silhouette creeping closer, just beyond the veil of rain. What is that? Thomas peered through the haze, his voice shrill. It moves. Father, there. Abandoning his post, Father Brown dashed forward, the rain no longer a barrier, but a frenzied curtain, shielding the terrible unknown. As he broke into a run, a dark figure broke free from the shadows, rushing towards the church. They collided. A flash of silver illuminated Thomas's eyes. The glint of the object at the same moment revealed on the priest's amulets of miracles. A small dagger, sharp and menacing, slid from the villain's hands into the muck. "Stop!" he called, bewildered yet resolved. But just as Thomas opened his mouth to inform, a gunshot erupted, shattering the evening's tranquility. The echo melded with the rain, a sharp crack that left an instant suffocating silence, as though time itself hung in the balance. Father Brown's heart seized in his chest. He spun to look, finding Thomas transfixed, eyes wide and unblinking, absorbing the tumult of doom hovering like an omen. "Run!" he urged, but as he turned, everything ignited into chaos. The link between guilt and innocence teetered on a razor's edge, unspooling before his eyes, and the shadows deepened, threatening to swallow them whole. Amid the cacophony, Thomas crumpled, clutching at his chest as if the weight of unprepared confessions bore down upon him. It was then, amongst the tapestry of chaos and the burgeoning storm, Father Brown caught the enormity of the moment, the frail threads of human emotion, failing against the tempest outside. Darkness loomed, choking the light in its wake. Somewhere, in the depths of man's despair, lay the murmur of truth, if only he could unfurl its grip before all was extinguished. And as the shadows lurked nearer, and the echoes of despair reverberated within the fog-laden depths of the night, a chilling thought solidified. Tomorrow, in the sweep of seconds, might bear witness to his faintest grasp of resolution, and yet tonight, the heart of a mystery lay, concealed in silence, in mud, and perhaps even in death, still waiting for the dawn. Chapter 3. The Letter That Arrived Too Late. A shriek cut through the tumult of the storm like shattered glass, splintering the air thick with fear. Father Brown found himself lingering at the threshold of Lady Agnes's grand hall, the remnants of the storm swirling in the distance as his heart raced. No, not him. Not dear Edwin. The lament came from the wretched lips of Lady Agnes herself, crumpled against the doorway, framed by the jagged silhouette of shadows. Her fingers clutched a stained handkerchief, the fabric trembling with the weight of lost hopes, and not far from her, relatives and curious onlookers surged like a sea of muted despair. Above them, the ceiling groaned as thunder rolled violently, the candles flickering wildly, illuminating faces etched with grief, and perhaps something darker. "Father, what is happening?" Julian was at his side, his voice a tight whisper, eyes darting with the unerring instinct of panic. The walls seemed to lean in, the atmosphere thick with questions left unanswered. He marched to the table, where the remnants of the gathering lay scattered, uneaten food, overturned chairs, but most notably, a draught from the cracked open window, fluttering paperwork like haunting spectres. Father Brown stepped into the fray, scanning the tumult, the words of the terrified Lady Agnes still echoing in his ears. The will, the letter, it never arrived. Edwin's affairs. Her explanation twisted into another choking sob as she swiped disheveled papers off the counter, her despair mirrored in the worried faces around. Lady Agnes, what do you mean? Father Brown's voice pierced through the disarray, cutting across the laden air. The woman looked up, eyes rimmed red and wild with the threat of more than just grief. A letter, a final testament. I sent it to him. I had my doubts after that heated family meeting, and I attempted to clarify certain matters, especially with her claim. But now that it's too late, what good is it to him dead? Margaret, Father Brown echoed, the name curling like smoke upon his lips. He cast a glance at one of the guests, a dark-haired woman sweeping through the onlookers with a gaze that could curdle milk. So the argument was over the estate? A family matter, Julian interjected, glancing between Lady Agnes and Father Brown, but driven by ambition. Margaret has been restless ever since Edwin declared his intent to rewrite the will. She persuaded him to reconsider. Her demands have become unyielding. Edwin's family background now loomed like a festering sore, rising to the surface like bubbles within boiling water. Snatches of whispers surrounded them, each as dangerous as a coiled viper. Accusations flared in the heated glances exchanged. The air was taut with intrigue, where backs were voraciously examined and fingers surreptitiously pointed. Father Brown, Lady Agnes's voice dropped to a whisper, urgent like the howl of the wind pressing against the windows. Do you believe one of us? Do you think someone here could be involved in Edwin's death? Her eyes darted from face to face, swallowing the haunting implications of her query. Involved or involuntary, he murmured thoughtfully, nearly inaudible over the storm. Yet there lies a vital piece hidden among these papers. If only I could see Edwin's last communication. The letter you sent. Eyes widened at his intent. Lady Agnes and Julian exchanged a glance, panic etching the corners of their expressions. You must understand, Julian said hesitantly. The letter, it will not help. It was never received. Perhaps it has been lost in transit. Just mere coincidence, Father Brown evoked, keen discernment sharpening. Or could it be the very ink of despair, crafted by some unseen hand? If a message was sent, but never delivered, would that not cloak the truth? While the electricity sparked around them, a flicker of movement drew Father Brown's attention. In the gathering shadows, he saw the nameless figure stalking in the background, Margaret still lurking nearby, her face a mask of concern or cunning, often one in the same. Mildly agitated, she seemed engrossed in securing the edges of her coat, smirking decisively as though her portraits painted themselves amidst the self-destructive storm. Margaret, you were close with your brother? Father Brown stepped towards her, but her posture tightened, preparing for escape or confrontation, not yet discerning which. You smiled, not the radiant charm of a grieving sister, but one laced with the sweetness of deceit. What do you seek now, Father? Just the truth, he replied, his calm demeanor unflinching despite the tension she radiated. Did you, perchance, know of Edwin's undisclosed correspondence? Lady Agnes speaks of a missing letter of his last will to clarify matters of inheritance. You must have heard something. I'm not his keeper, she retorted, flicking her hair back defiantly. If you seek sympathy, try next door. With her anger like smoldering embers, Father Brown felt the gnawing emotional undercurrents shifting in the air. Grief, envy, and simmering resentment blurred the lines of loyalty. But you are more than just siblings. Try to remember the ties that bind. After all, an estate can prompt desperate motivations, Margaret. The unbearable weight of silence fell operatically upon the room until it shattered as a servant rushed in, breathless and drenched, handing a piece of crumpled parchment to Lady Agnes before retreating back into darkness as swiftly as he had appeared. "I found this in the muck outside, near the window-sill." With trembling hands, she unfolded it, the noise of the storm fading momentarily into a vacuum of suspense. It must be... But the moment was stolen, for she gasped, recognition painted across her features as she passed it towards Father Brown, still clutching at Edwin's last chance for clarity, the fragile paper stained and battered from the elements. As the priest inspected the letter, thunder rattled once more, a disquieting omen smothering the hall. The words blurred against the backdrop of rain-laden skies, but there it was, circumstantial evidence lingering like unwanted guests at the doorstep of death. He lifted his gaze, determined. "Lady Agnes, it implies foul play poor entirely. Did Edwin fear someone's intervention? Did he confide in you? Who was attempting to thwart him?" Before she could answer, the world retreated as thundering footsteps echoed outside, growing nearer, relentless. The unmistakable sound of a door slamming opened wide into the night, and then the power surged, extinguishing the candles that had borne witness thus far. Darkness swallowed them, leaving only the faint whispers of fear, quaking within their hearts. Father Brown strained to see through shadows cast against the walls, yet he could not shake the nagging sensation spiriting through his gut. A sensation that something more sinister, more explosive, lay vastly concealed. "Run!" screeched Margaret, a pitch of terror puncturing the silence. And in the hollow murmur of the silence, another gunshot rang out, ricocheting like a chilling promise of doom, leaving only the bitter taste of fear and uncertainty lingering thick in the air as Father Brown made his final assessment before everything spiraled downwards into the chaos ahead. A letter, a warning perhaps, but in this monumental hour, the promise of clarity arrived too late as hands of fate tangled tightly around their throats, refusing release. Chapter 4. The Will in the Vicar's Study. The door swung open with a creak that tore through the reverberating darkness of the vicarage like a discordant note. And there, framed in the dim glow of the lightning-flashed night, stood Father Brown, frozen in his tracks, staring at the tangible shadows, whispering warnings from the depths of the study. "No, you can't!" The sharp, breathless cry erupted from a voice submerged in panic. Margaret, her face pale and distorted with fear, clawed at the air as if trying to grasp the intangible horrors lurking within. But Father Brown was already moving, driven by an urgency thudding in his chest, his mind racing ahead of the storm, boiling beyond the windows, relentless droplets crashing rhythmically against the pane like a sinister countdown. A momentary flicker of candlelight danced across the room, illuminating dust motes suspended in the air as reasons cautioned against the suffocating silence. Edwin's study was a cramped den of quietude, cluttered yet oddly ordered, a daunting reflection of its late owner's life. The tension curled tighter, a noose pulled by unspoken accusations and buried truths. "Margaret, stand back," Father Brown called, his voice steady like the tolling church bells resounding in the distance. His unyielding command echoed through the oppressive air as she hesitated, the dread threatening to overcome her. He stepped further into the chamber, the scent of old books melding with the metallic tang of fear. Papers lay scattered like autumn leaves strewn in chaos, remnants of the disruption left in the wake of Edwin's untimely demise. But one paper caught the priest's keen eye, partially concealed beneath a heavy tome. As he lifted it with delicate reverence, a gasp escaped his lips. A blood-stained letter, the ink smudged, its tone filled with desperation. The words, though difficult to decipher, conveyed a sense of urgency, an appeal for help. "Margaret," he implored, glancing back at her, "what have you forced him to bear?" "Nothing," she gasped, her voice rising like a bird startled from its perch. "I told him to reconsider. The estate, it was his decision, Father." Her insistence rang false, a fragile glass, crumbling beneath the pressure of scrutiny. He had his doubts about the revisions. He worried that the will wouldn't reflect his wishes. The priest sensed the shadows retreating further into corners, harboring secrets that could unravel the very fabric binding this family together. "Yet you spoke of your brother's wavering intentions," he pondered aloud, scanning the surface of the desk, his fingers brushing against the edges of dust-covered ledger books. What if this revision was not merely a matter of clarity, but of ulterior motives hidden beneath? Margaret, clearly agitated, began pacing. "Father, you're not listening. I wanted his well-being, not—" But a tremor in her voice betrayed her, as if the mere hint of guilt washed over her like a swell of nausea. Before he could pursue the inquiry further, the weather howled against the study, drowning them in its fury, an ominous backdrop to an increasing fervor of untruths. Father Brown's attention shifted back to the letter, revealing a portion of it intelligible now. "It says here, 'I have become aware of someone watching me.'" He murmured the words thoughtfully, each syllable dripping with a sense of dread. Edwin believed he was in danger. "Danger," she echoed, the color draining from her face. But to what end? Just then, an unsettled mouse skittered across the floorboards, capturing Father Brown's focus. "We must search for the vicar's other confidences," he urged, his hands now steadying as he navigated through the debris of Edwin's life. A jumble of unfinished notes and ink-stained messages piled helter-skelter. Beneath an unarranged stack, something glinted, a small brass key, polished yet uniquely pockmarked, resting inconspicuously on the desk, like a silent guardian of hidden passageways. "Father, what are you doing?" Margaret's voice bristled with an anxiety that hissed through the tumult of thunder. Yet Father Brown's pulse quickened. The key, so innocuous, bore the promise of undiscovered secrets. "This belongs to one of the drawers." "No, you can't," she rushed forward, seizing his arm with fingers like iron. The desperation in her grip mirrored the doubts swirling within her heart. "You must respect his—" "Respect," he interjected, the urgency shifting to a resolute determination. If Edwin sensed danger, not only for himself, but perhaps a burden weighing on you, who could truly respect that? The air thickened, a potent cocktail of danger and revelation filling the void between them. Father Brown withdrew, unyielding against her pull, and with a decisive turn, he slid the key from his palm into the lock of the top drawer, feeling the metallic cold bite against his skin. With a swift twist, the latch clicked, and the drawer opened with a sigh, revealing untouched correspondence piled neatly, and amidst them, another letter, sealed in dark blue wax, emblazoned with the initials E.L. "Do you recognize it?" Father Brown prompted, but her eyes glossed over, missing the opportunity of response. As he took the letter in hand, his breath quickened at the thought of unwrapping its potential, even as another rumble of thunder surged outside, as if nature itself wanted to drown the truth. And then, in a crack splitting the heavens, the world trembled as the door crashed open, filling the study with a figure cloaked in mystery, face obscured by the tumult of the night. "Father," it was Thomas, voice strained, wild-eyed with urgency. "We must go. They are coming." In that heartbeat, reality coiled tighter like a noose around his throat. The letter slipped from his grasp, whispering secrets as it danced to the floor, the truth now widened by a chasm of dread. Forever buried under treachery, Father Brown barely whispered to Thomas before darkness burst in around them, twisting the reality they lived in, the promise of clarity pulling like a frayed thread, threatening to sever both life and death together in a final embrace. "Wait," he cried, lunging forward, but the moment slipped into chaos. A cacophony of sounds erupted outside, a storm fused with fear, clawing at their very core. And as the last flicker of light extinguished, ominous shadows closed in, laughter blossoming from the depths, and Father Brown knew in an instant the truth was not merely lost. It had become a desperate race for survival, where the enemies were no longer mere whispers in the night. Chapter 5. The Whispering Shadows. The room thundered with terror as Margaret's scream sliced through the choking darkness, echoing against the grimy walls of the dilapidated vicarage. "They've come," she cried, her voice quaking with a panic that sent electric shockwaves through Father Brown's spine. The candles, mere flickers of defiance against the pressing night, sputtered violently as the howling wind rattled the timbers. In that fleeting moment of hesitation, shadows swirled like hungry phantoms, inching ever closer as he staggered back, a palpable tension clinging to the air like a thick fog. "Stay close," Father Brown commanded, his grip tightening around the letter sealed with E.L. in faded wax, a forgotten promise turned ominous. Outside, footsteps thundered, heralding the approach of unseen figures who might bear ill will. And the past, cloaked in forgotten grievances, was poised to resurface, like a tide unyielding. He glanced toward the window, where rain spattered against the glass, each droplet an echo of the haunting tales whispered around the village like a sinister lullaby. As he peered into the uncertainty of the stormy night, a chill gripped his heart, whispering tales of betrayal and unearned envy. "Margaret, there is more to this than mere inheritance squabbles," he said, his voice low but charged with urgency. "You know as well as I that Edwin's fears were founded. This letter suggests secrets lurked far deeper than familial discontent." Her pale face, smeared with distress, twisted in confusion. "Secrets? What do you mean? This is madness, Father. You think I harbor ill will against my brother?" You, who urged him to alter his will, felt the weight of something darker, something that murmurs incessantly like an unsolved riddle, he countered, keen eyes narrowing, as he gestured to the disheveled papers strewn across the study, each bearing an echo of a life lived amid concealed chaos. There, among the forgotten correspondence, an innocuous ink smear caught his attention. A single startling detail rendered otherwise ordinary letters significant, a connection to the village tavern, the weary traveler where Edwin frequented. With a sudden intensity, the implications cascaded in Father Brown's mind. "It's not merely anger or jealousy that leads to murder," he murmured, piecing together hidden alliances and concealed antagonisms that dotted the village landscape, but rather the whispers of old grievances that, coupled with greed, form a relentless union. The tension built like the crescendo of an impending storm, thickening the atmosphere as the countdown to revelation drew ever closer. "Listen," he implored, struggling against the tide of fear wrapping around them. "Many with ties to us are not who they seem. Do you not recall the squabbles over adjoining lands, the whispered exchanges at the weary traveller? These things weigh heavy, and Edwin's ink could become a tool of the vile if placed in the wrong hands. But father," her brow crinkled in anguish, "why would anyone want to harm Edwin? He was known for returning that which didn't belong to him, standing for righteousness. A saint or a fool seeking to protect others while neglecting the very foundations under his own feet?" Father Brown replied, his voice laden with somber realization. Perhaps someone understood his virtue as a weakness to exploit. A loud crash from the corridor broke their intense dialogue, sending a wave of dread crashing over them. The door to the study rattled violently against its frame, the sound frothing with chaos that reverberated through the vicarage. Marginally, Father Brown edged closer to the door, poised to intercept whatever monstrous forces prowled beyond. At that precise moment, a figure stumbled into the dimly lit room, bathed in fleeting flashes of lightning. It was Thomas, eyes wild, color drained from his face as if he'd just witnessed a death. "Father, you need to hide the letter," he panted, his breath hitching on the damp air, the foreboding urgency amplifying the throbbing tension. "I saw them. They're searching for you, searching for it. The madness has grown, and they believe it holds the key." Who? Who searches?" Father Brown pressed, his heart racing as shadows flickered across Thomas's quivering form. "Villagers," Thomas wheezed, swallowing hard against a wave of raw fear. "Whispers have spread like wildfire. They think Edwin's estate hides more than wealth, that it cradles truths about the past that none must know. Prophecies of wrath stitch together the fabric of their tempers." "Misdirection," Father Brown murmured, noting the irony stroking the chilled contours of the atmosphere. "Deception and appearance stretched beyond the skin. Buried beneath layers of polite village life, primal instincts of survival and preservation were igniting like dry tinder against the bleak winds of desperation." The room vibrated with an alarming resonance, shadows encroaching closer, the world outside churning in a tempest of its own fury. "We must go," Thomas cried, panic coating each word like bitter bile. "The more they know, the more danger you are in." As the door began to splinter under the weight of their pursuers, Father Brown's gaze darted between Margaret's frightened eyes and the letter clutched tightly in his grasp. A sudden realization struck sharper than the crisp wind slicing through the room. The letter contained not merely words, but the power to shackle secrets, and it was a burden he could no longer carry without consequence. Just as he turned to hand it over, the door burst wide open. The figures on the threshold blackened silhouettes against the white noise storm outside, filled with ire and accusation. "You!" they bellowed, their voices a cacophony of enrage as they rushed into the room, seeking justice or perhaps blood. "Father, protect the truth!" Margaret shrieked, lunging toward him as the figures lunged forward, hands reaching out with intent. The weight of Edwin's revelations hung over them, poised to erupt into chaos. And as the shadows swallowed the candlelight, Father Brown knew that in this fleeting moment, the truth had become an empty vessel, as their lives intermingled in a twisted dance of survival, veering dangerously close to annihilation. "Run!" he shouted, but the command was swallowed by the roar of the tempest outside, leaving behind only the desperate sound of hearts racing against the encroaching darkness. Chapter 6. The Portrait of Deceit. The thunder roared overhead, a furious omen, as the grand estate loomed through the pounding rain, its once imposing facade now cloaked in shadows that seemed to writhe like a living creature. Father Brown darted down the draughty corridors, the damp air thick with the earthy scent of rotting wood. Every gust of wind seemed to carry whispers that stirred the very walls. Time pressed upon him as the reality of pursuit mirrored the storm outside, an echoing chaos that pounded against his resolve. A distant scream shattered his thoughts, and he quickened his pace toward the great hall, where the grand portrait of Edwin's father, Lord Lawrence, loomed silently, its eyes insidious in their unyielding stare. It was as if the painted figure sensed something, an unfathomable truth, tugging at the strands of deceit, weaving through the house. "Father," called Thomas, his voice strident against the clamor of the storm, racing beside Brown. "We must uncover whatever is hidden here. Knightley is convinced the answers lie within these walls." The urgency etched across the young man's features was a reflection of the turmoil lying just beneath the surface of their investigation. "Knightley," Father Brown murmured. That name tugged at his memory like the chill creeping through the corridor. The local magistrate, a man of apparent civility, but marred with a reputation for shrouded motives, yet their involvement had been accidental, a mere brush with fate unleashed by Edwin's unfortunate demise. "What has he uncovered?" "They say the family's fortunes rest upon more than mere inheritance," Thomas replied, glancing back apprehensively as if shadows might suddenly emerge to snatch him away. "Rumors swirl of a hidden will, or perhaps a secret buried in the estate's history. If discovered, it could shift our perceptions of family bonds endlessly." Narrowing his eyes at the portrait, Father Brown noted the tension in Thomas's voice. "Is that what drives him? A thirst for opportunity and schemes?" In that moment, the storm outside twisted into a violent crescendo, rattling window panes. The boy flinched, and Father Brown tapped a thoughtful finger against his chin, a gesture learned through the trials of moral introspection and keen observation. Or is it fear, perhaps more grievous than greed, a desire to shield a truth he believes could shatter the delicate veneer of familial love? The words clawed at him, even as they left his mouth. After all, deceit often masqueraded as fear, while wisdom was cloaked in audacity. With a determined stride, Father Brown summoned his courage and approached the portrait. The fabric of reality shifted as he pulled himself from the horrors beyond, compelled to decipher the ghosts of this place. The face of Lord Lawrence stared back, a stern visage illuminated by flashes of lightning, eyes glinting with an unnerving life as the storm enveloped his very essence. It was the frailest connection, the historical link that ran eerily deep within the family, yet concealed countless grudges that dripped like venom into the marrow of their shared lineage. "You recall the rumors swirling about Edwin during his time at the Weary Traveller?" Father Brown pressed, his back still toward Thomas. "How he was often spoken of in the language of half-truths, intertwined with whispers of a woman, a ghost from a past that loved him but ultimately condemned him." "What do you mean?" Thomas asked, stepping closer, curiosity competing with doubt. His insistence to return to the village only amplified that inheritance was not the only thread tying different lives into an incessant knot. Lord Lawrence was married once before, a wife whose fate remains a mystery. If Edwin held knowledge of deeds previously thought forgotten by the family, could that be the crux of his fear? Is Edwin merely a martyr, or the very embodiment of a hidden threat? Father, can you be certain? Certainty is often elusive. Thomas, he replied, turning to face the younger man, but let me lend you my reasoning. The possible enigma lies hidden not within Edwin's choices, but in choices forced upon him by others. Others like the family itself. The echo of that line reverberated in the air as thunder struck once more, causing an unexplainable dread to wash over them. Edwin feared not only death, but what it meant for his lineage. It is not the inheritance of wealth, yet the inheritance of secrets that gnaws at his family, one that could tear them asunder. A scuffle interrupted their musing, footsteps scattering dangerously close. Father Brown glanced toward the narrow passageway outside the hall, where the candlelight flickered in protest against the encroaching darkness. "We must hasten this discovery," he said, gripping the cold metal of the ornate frame surrounding the ominous painting. Yet as he attempted to disengage the portrait's eerie gaze, Thomas's startled gasp drew his attention back. "Father, look!" What had appeared like a mere decorative element of the wall now seemed illuminated with dreadful promise, as the painting's edge shifted slightly, revealing not a smooth plane, but a shadowy divide beneath it. A corridor, hidden and dark, beckoned with the allure of unmasked truths. "This is something new," Brown breathed, his heart pounding with the rhythm of anticipation. But before he could fully process the implications of what lay concealed behind Lord Lawrence's painted smile, the door swung open violently, slamming against the wall with the fury of a tempest. There stood Knightley, his figure solid and imposing, drenched and smeared with the grime of the night. "Father Brown." "Knightley, what is it?" "You cannot trust anyone in this house," he spat, breathless with urgency. "The villagers have rallied." Before he could finish, another figure emerged behind Knightley, face drenched in shadows, yet ominous in its intent. A gunshot rang through the hall, pitching the lights into an abyss as the fire in the hearth flickered out. A flash illuminated the scene, capturing horror and frenzy in a single, eternal moment. Father Brown felt the coldness seep into his bones as the world melted into chaos, the portrait looming, alive with dread, eyes now gleaming with potential betrayal. "Run for cover," he barked, but a desperate scream pierced the air, and just as the thunder roared above, the second shot rang out, echoing the very depths of deceit that shadowed the darkness of their world. Chapter 7. A Shadow at Matins. The echo of a gunshot mingled with the toll of distant church bells, merging chaos and solemnity into one dissonant symphony. Father Brown, heart pounding in his chest, felt the very marrow of his existence quake as shadows danced across the stone walls, flickering in unison with the flames of a sputtering candle beside him. The coppery scent of blood, rich and rancid, hung heavy in the air, stifling his breath as he maneuvered through the disarray, intent on the life that he could still save. "Thomas!" he shouted, but the voice was lost amidst the storm of pounding feet and anguished cries that erupted outside the grand estate, the entire world seeming to fracture and fall apart with each tremor. He crouched low, adrenaline sharpening his instincts, desperate to find the thread that would weave this catastrophe back into the tapestry of reason. The portrait of Lord Lawrence glared down with malicious indifference, its painted gaze now a silent observer of horror unfolding beneath its domineering frame. Sudden shouts and then screams swelled from somewhere within the house. Brown's mind raced. He quickly glanced at Knightley, who stood frozen, eyes wide and wild, desperately scanning for threats, as if the answers were etched into the dampness of the walls. Time was slipping away, just like the lives affected by this ominous gathering. "He's gone mad, Knightley," Father Brown called, gesturing wildly towards the door as footsteps receded, the crunch of glass beneath boots punctuating the urgency. "We must summon those outside and set the truth free before it suffocates us all." "But Father, the villagers," Knightley spat back, fear splintering his composure. "They've turned into a mob, believing murder is the only justice that can be wrought. Edwin's death has stirred more than just whispers. It has ignited a fire that burns with ancient grievances. They'll heed no cause but their own." In that moment, something unfurled within Father Brown's mind, a tendril of knowledge, dark and twisted, coiling around forgotten memories, lingering like ash in the wake of a fire. He remembered the morning prayers from days past, when the winds blew ominous and rededicated the souls of the faithful to the reckoning of truth. He had perceived a peculiar figure during matins that day, unsettled and ghostly, flickering in and out of view, its presence but a shadow woven amid the hymns. How fitting, he thought, that even then, darkness had danced at the threshold of hope. In an instant, urgency turned into resolve. "Wisdom can soothe a raging heart, Knightley. There must be a path through all this chaos. The answers you seek lie beyond mere vengeance." He pushed past the magistrate, casting a steely glance towards the staircase that spiraled into darker passages. "We cannot let fear dictate the course of justice tonight, or we will find ourselves entombed within our own sins." With purpose, Father Brown ascended the stairs, glancing over his shoulder. Knightley hesitated, caught in the throes of indecision, yet the fire in Brown's eyes ignited a flicker of courage in him too. "Follow me." Across the upper corridor, the sound of muffled sobs spilled from the doors, swirling with the remnants of a nightmare still taking shape. Pushing open a small weather-worn door, he entered what once might have been a tranquil sanctuary, now tarnished by bloodshed. A kneeling bench, dust-streaked prayers suspended in time, lay abandoned beneath the weight of a world awash with malevolence. There, among the shadows, lay a letter, crumpled yet stark, against the ghostly hue of the fading light, streaming through the stained glass window. Father Brown's heart quickened. He could not afford to overlook even the most innocent details, for each was a thread in an intricate tapestry of truth and deceit. "Thomas," he called out again, this time spotting the young man, pale as a wraith, emerging from behind another door, rushed forward and picked up the blood-stained missive, his eyes widening as they absorbed its contents. This could change everything. "Let me see." Thomas reached for it, the desperation palpable in the boy's voice, but Father Brown held it tight, absorbing the dire implications. "What does it say?" "It is a letter addressed to Edwin from a woman, one who claimed more than hidden truths. She promised him safety from the very shadows that haunt us now." Before they could delve deeper, a sudden noise, a thud against the heavy wooden door, startled them. "Father Brown!" Knightley's voice rose through the clamoring panic outside. "They're coming this way." Father Brown's resolve thickened, bolstered by an insight that pounded in his chest. "This letter may serve as the compass in this storm, but first we must reclaim control of our own souls, lest we join those screaming vengeance below." But just then, a shape materialized at the door, a figure cloaked in shadows yet disturbingly familiar. It flickered like the candlelight, hesitation brimming in every spectral movement. "Edwin," Thomas gasped, recognition clashing with disbelief. "No," Father Brown interjected, his voice slicing through the questions like a blade. "It cannot be he, not without proof. The truth is far more complex than mere appearances. Shadows can deceive. This figure holds more mystery than certainty." Suddenly the figure moved forward, and the candle sputtered ominously, casting flickering shadows that twisted and writhed like a serpent amidst the growing darkness. And just as the candlelight extinguished, a thunderous crash shook the estate. A window shattered, a scream echoed through the halls, and the smell of gunpowder lingered in the air like a harbinger of doom. With hearts racing and shadows closing in around them, Father Brown squared his shoulders, both horror and determination coursing through his veins. What waits beyond these walls offers neither solace nor salvation. We must find the light, lest we be engulfed by the darkness that seizes our actions, or we may find ourselves lost to this hunt forever. And just then, in a stunning crescendo of suspense and dread, a second figure emerged from the inky blackness, holding a weapon that gleamed ominously in the dark, aimed squarely at Father Brown's chest. "Step away from the letter," the figure commanded, their voice cold enough to chill the marrow of his bones. Time hung in the balance, and with it, the fate of them all. Chapter 8. The Hidden Room. The jagged crack of breaking glass shattered the heavy air, harmonizing with the clamor of distant screams that filled the night with an insufferable terror. Father Brown barely registered the repeated shots echoing like a warped heartbeat within the villa's stone walls, his concentration burdened by the weight of truth, urgently seeking revelation. His heart raced as he locked eyes with the shadowy figure at the door, its weapon gleaming malevolently, a dark promise of chaos threatening to engulf them all. "Stand down, my friend," he said, his voice low but firm, rooted in an unshakable calm amidst the gnawing dread. But the figure, the spectral remnant of a man once living, now a harbinger of uncertainty, remained rigid, the threat palpable. "Step away from the letter." The command was repeated, cold and demanding, sending a tremor of recognition through the vicar's veins. In a heartbeat, he understood the fragility of their hope. Behind him, he sensed Knightley and Thomas scrambling for clarity, any semblance of rational thought swallowed beneath their rising panic. Yet as he clutched the blood-streaked missive, a flicker of insight ignited within him. Secrets coiled tightly, yearning to be liberated. But first, they would need to escape the immediate peril looming before them. "Easy now," Father Brown urged, his eyes narrowing on the figure whose identity remained obscured by shadows. "You needn't escalate this further. The truth lies not with a gun, but within that letter. It speaks of safety, of promises made in whispers, and perhaps it reveals much more than you think." With every word he uttered, he felt himself weaving a fragile tapestry of trust, an attempt to wrest control from the chaos that clawed at the edges of their reality. In the dim light of the chamber, an ephemeral moment of hesitation flickered in the figure's stance, revealing just a hint of uncertainty, as if caught between layers of deception that turned one's motives murky like mist over the moors. "What do you know of promises?" the shrouded figure spat back, the bitterness venomous in its bite. "All have betrayed them. It's nothing but a corpse's wish to lay still. Those words can't save you from judgment." "You'd be surprised," Brown replied, his calm unwavering. "Judgment is often misplaced, and vengeance can be a fierce phantom demanding a toll, but we seek answers together, not as enemies." His tone softened as he took a step forward. There was a twitch among Knightley and Thomas, a desperate wish for action pulsing in their veins. But Father Brown sensed the storm brewing. Confusion and fear, coupled with desire, could lead to calamity. "This is not merely about Edwin," he continued, his eyes piercing into the depths of the shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. "The inheritance of secrets takes many forms, my friend. Perhaps you must ask yourself who truly holds the power in this tale of woe." And then came a noise, a creak from behind the heavy oak paneling that made the hair on the back of Father Brown's neck stand on end. Like a cue, the portrait of Lord Lawrence pitched slightly, crackling against the wall as if some hidden force or folly sought to unveil its dark cache. Without instruction, Thomas, pulse quickening with new-found determination, stepped forward. "Father, the corridor!" With an instinctual rush, Father Brown shifted his focus to the narrow opening they'd uncovered earlier. The atmosphere throbbed thick with anticipation as the discovery offered a pathway to untold truths. "Knightley, Thomas, let us not be ensnared in this dialogue." At the portrait's edge, the hidden corridor yawned ominously ahead, inviting yet foreboding, a spectre of ancient history echoing within the villa's walls. Every instinct cried out for them to venture forward. "I swear, the answer is here," Father Brown proclaimed, his voice a beacon in the darkness. He tossed aside any uncertainty as thunder rumbled overhead, a dramatic punctuation of their urgency echoing through the air. "Gather your courage, for shadows may yet yield their secrets." As they hurried through the passage, the dim light flickered anxiously. The only guiding illumination was the fading remnants of the flames from the hearth behind them. Sweat beaded on Father Brown's brow. The smell of damp stone mixed sharply with the scent of gunpowder still lingering in the air. "Look, there, on the floor," Thomas exclaimed, pointing to an uneven slab beneath the dull light. Brown knelt down, tracing hesitant fingers along the cracks, likewise observing jagged memories etched against the smooth surface. An innocuous detail, a smear of dried blood layered like a cold reminder against the graying stone, spoke to the hidden histories brewed within familial bonds long since frayed. "They fought here, didn't they?" Knightley hissed, breathless realization dawning upon him. This was the last struggle between them. "Or the first," Father Brown countered thoughtfully, exhilaration coursing through him as they pried loose the corner of the tiling. With a bated breath, he peeled it back, revealing an iron-bound chest buried beneath, as heavy and ancient as the secrets it contained. Every fated thread binding this lineage to violence echoed in the silence as they stared at the chest, anticipation gripping their throats like a vice. "What could it hold?" Thomas whispered, newly emboldened yet trembling, staring at Brown in rapt fascination, waiting for the unfolding of fate. "Perhaps the true history of a family torn apart by desires they dare not name," Brown murmured, his fingertips tightening over the latch, sending an electric thrill coursing through his body. With a resolute push, he grasped the heavy lid, every creak echoing louder than the thunder outside, but also fuller than the unbroken tension that now surged amongst them. They were about to discover a world of devotions and betrayals, a net of truths poised to ensnare them all. When suddenly the air quaked. A loud bang echoed from behind, as if the walls themselves were warning against what was to come. In an instant, the lights extinguished entirely, plunging them into a suffocating pitch blackness. The only sounds, the frantic beat of hearts and the ragged breath of bodies drawn close together in fear, waiting for the inevitable shattering of this moment. Before Father Brown could call for clarity, a figure loomed in the darkened doorway. It moved with predatory grace and a flicker of certainty. "What have you found, Father?" The voice carried a poised menace, sharp in its clarity, hauntingly familiar. "Whatever lies hidden now belongs to me." And before he could muster a defense, before light could reveal the depth of the new threat, a metallic click echoed within the room. A gun was drawn, and in that moment it felt as if the very ground they stood upon tilted dangerously, promising ruin to all hopes harbored within those secretive walls. Chapter 9. The Final Trap. A gunshot tore through the air like the crack of a whip, reverberating off the stone walls and piercing the oppressive darkness. Father Brown's heart hammered painfully against his ribcage as he instinctively pushed Thomas and Knightley behind him, his mind racing while specters of doubt and fear darted into the shadows that engulfed the room. The acrid scent of gunpowder mingled with the earthy dampness of the hidden corridor, creating a palpable tension that thickened the air and stung the lungs. He strained to make out the figure that loomed just beyond the threshold, silhouetted against a flash of lightning that briefly illuminated the chaos of the moment. "Step back," the voice commanded, sharp and unforgiving, echoing in the gloom like a harbinger of calamity. "You're trespassing in a realm where blood speaks louder than reason." The threat infused the air with an icy dread that seemed to still time itself. "Please," Father Brown interjected, his voice steady, laced with an authority familiar to those who had come to trust his judgment in the most harrowing of times. "I implore you, consider—" "Enough!" the figure roared, raising the weapon as if to silence any further disagreement. But just as tension coalesced into palpable fear, the flickering glow from the remnants of their extinguished candle alighted a familiar object on the floor, a marble figurine depicting an elegant dancer poised in mid-motion. "Wait!" Father Brown's voice rang out, a desperate plea interwoven with a newfound recognition. "That piece, it belonged to Lady Agnes. It was left in the drawing room after the ball last season." The weapon faltered for a moment, and in that pivotal instance, Father Brown seized the opportunity. "You knew she had it, didn't you? It spoke of family, betrayal, perhaps even love that's too strong to let die. Where are those sentiments now, I wonder?" In the flickering shadows, a brief hesitation flickered across the figure's face. There was a remorse conjoined with the rage that had reclaimed him, just long enough for Father Brown to act. "You do not have to carry this burden alone. All that glitters is not gold. The treasures of the heart hold more worth than the dagger you wield. Come, lay it down and speak the truth that reveals your soul. No one comes untouched from this place." The gun barrel twisted toward Father Brown, silencing any further protest. "You think you can force the truth from me with kind words. I have seen the darkness of the heart, felt its clutches rise like smoke. There's nothing left for me but vindication." "Vindication? Or is it vengeance you seek?" The vicar's eyes held fast on the figure, anchoring them both in an intimate revelation. "Is this truth, or a way to absolve yourself from guilt? Are you here for justice, or something more sinister?" For a fleeting moment, the shadows dissolved into memories. The echoes of laughter, discord, and desperation floated through the air. He could almost see them. Past grievances, from simmering disputes over inheritance, unfulfilled promises buried under layers of deceit, were now unfurling like oil on water, revealing the murky motives that swept through the entire household. Enough of this. The figure trembled with suppressed rage, a sonorous breath that cracked and splintered through the tension of the room. You do not know my pain. How many times I cried for the stolen legacy beneath this roof. The very ground beneath your feet quakes with it. You cannot understand. Then let me help you understand. Father Brown stepped closer, the distance between them as fragile as gossamer, woven with lies, but also implications of buried fears. What has claimed your soul is the burden of secrets you cling desperately to. Speak them freely. Gunfire lit the waxen surface of their resolve, but within that moment, dawning clarity molded the figure's rigidity into uncertainty. In it, Father Brown glimpsed shadows, entwining motives, layered with ambition, a desperate hope cloaked in betrayal. The letters in that chest, brought forth from their graves, have bound you in chains, haven't they? Lurking like the past, waiting to be unveiled. They are but instruments of salvation or damnation, depending on who they proclaim their truths to. What do you know of salvation? The figure's voice trembled, the gun wavering like a pendulum. I seek to supplant those who've wronged me. I lost everything to this family's greed. They've buried my worth beneath their ambitions. Father Brown sensed the pivot of truth beginning to turn. Behind him, he felt Knightley and Thomas holding their breath, every whisper of the wind and the scratching of rain against the windows accentuating the silence. But can you reclaim what is lost if it means drowning in vengeance? There is always a choice, my friend, to unshackle oneself from darkness. The figure's expression flickered ominously in the half-darkness. A vulnerability wrestled against the anger, reflected by the gleam of sweat animating their brow. A choice? To confess? To consent? Only forfeits what remains of my dignity. No, it bestows a different kind of power, one to liberate rather than destroy. Father Brown pressed on, leaning into the storm of emotions swirling around them. Sometimes exposure leads not to ruin, but to revelation. By embracing the shadows of your past, you might yet uncover the truth of your future. Just as the fabric of tension unfurled, and the figure stumbled from anger to contemplation, a sudden crashing sound erupted from the far end of the corridor, sinister and ominous, echoing ominously like the tolling of distant church bells. What was that? Knightley's voice quivered, eyes wide, as the air thickened with foreboding. In a breathless instant, the door exploded inward. A spectre swathed in shadow barreled into the chamber with astounding ferocity, unmasking both vulnerability and grotesque ambition. Every truth bears witnesses. Every witness wields secrets well. In the pandemonium of the storm and the whirling shadows of their fates, something within Father Brown shimmered amid the chaos. Insight brushed against the mingling scents of gunpowder and betrayal. Just as he reached the brink of resolution, his mind speculating and analyzing the clues that had danced like phantoms, crimson rivulets splattered across the floor, vibrant against the dull stone, marking the apex of conflict. The room erupted once more, in cries amid the chaos. A blinding light shot through the darkness, illuminating the fearful expressions emblazed on every face. The echoes of thunder mingled with the shrieks of urgency as Father Brown watched in horror and astonishment as the figure behind the gun crumbled, and within that electrifying moment, an imminent revelation loomed. poised to ensnare them all, gesturing toward a point of no return. As the world twisted back into obscurity, Father Brown stood on the precipice of revelation and danger alike, the pressure of complex guilt and haunting truths rippling through the very bones of the estate. The curtain was about to fall, and with bated breath, he awaited the final act to unfold. Just as realization dawned, the unspeakable shattered any semblance of normalcy. The powder keg of their entwined fates was about to detonate, and the darkness was ready to swallow all that had not yet been lost. Chapter 10. The Cross in the Attic. The storm howled outside, lashing against the estate's ancient stone walls like a pack of wild beasts, each crash of thunder reverberating through the very core of Father Brown's being. His heart raced, an unrelenting drumbeat of adrenaline thrumming in his ears as he stood at the threshold of revelation, a place fraught with desperation and unfurling dread. A bare flicker of candlelight cast wavering shadows across the room, illuminating the scene of havoc, while the acrid scent of gunpowder loomed heavy in the damp air, mingling with the woodsy aroma of the aged, decaying attic. In the shadows, that ominous figure quivered, half hidden, clenching something. No, something more than just a weapon. "You've come for what is mine," they hissed, an emotive shrillness weaving through their voice like the cold wind that assailed the night. "This cross." Amidst their rigid stance, the figure brandished the artifact as if it were both sword and salvation, wreathed in the thick tension swirling like mist around them. "It's the key to everything, and those who think they know its worth don't understand what it means to lose." With clenched fists, Father Brown stepped further into the flickering light, catching glimpses of the figure's face, framed by shadows. The anguish etched into their brow caught his conscience like a moth to flame. "Have you not seen? It's not the cross that binds you, nor the blood that stains it, but the guilt you clutch to your chest. Is it absolution you aim for, or mere bloodlust?" "Shut your mouth!" The figure's words, laced with venom, trembled against the storm's roar. "You think you can plead the case of my heart, yet you don't see how much it has suffered, how little it has been seen." A flash of lightning illuminated their face, revealing eyes that shone with manic fervor, clouds of determination hovering just beneath the surface. Father Brown felt a cold unease stretch through him like a gnarled root. The murderer stood not merely in shadows of crime, but in voluminous shades of tragedy, shackled by unseen chains. "You bury the truth under layers of vengeance, yet the past has a way of breaking through," he said, his voice soft but firm, laden with compassion. "It speaks to those willing to listen. What does this cross mean to you? It appears more a talisman of torment than a symbol of faith." "Faith," the figure spat, finger trembling on the trigger. "Faith has brought nothing but pain. Pain etched into every inch of this estate, whispered to the corners by wretched souls such as mine. It once belonged to her, and if it holds her secrets, it now belongs to me." With a feverish intensity, their gaze flicked to the faded canvas of the wall behind them, as if anticipating the very shadows of that past to rise and dance. In that infinitesimal instant, an ember of insight ignited in Father Brown's mind. "Lady Agnes," he breathed softly, eyes narrowing. "She wore it daily among the pearls and silks, draped like promises over misgivings." Pieces of a long-spun tapestry began to weave themselves together in his thoughts, exposing the glimpses of an intricate family saga, each thread imbued with whispered betrayals. The figure receded slightly, absorbed by the quagmire of their memories, hesitating, just long enough. You think me the monster in this story. You see me guilty, consumed by shadows of my family's legacy, but understanding, real understanding, gives rise to compassion, not culpability. A barely audible tremor marked their last words, revealing a fissure of raw emotion leading back to the hidden depths of their psyche, where dark truths lay buried like bodies beneath the floorboards. Yes, Father Brown replied, his own heart aching with compassion for this wretched soul branded by their lineage. But it's precisely that understanding that can free you. You need not be defined by anxiety and bitterness. Unshackle yourself from the chaos of secrets, and the truth can become your savior. Just as he uttered those words, a cacophony erupted outside. The ponytailed, panicked voices of the estate's residents echoed through the corridors, rising like the dawn chorus. But their cries were misted, soaked in trepidation and blood. "No!" came a faint murmur that dripped through the chaos, a voice much like Lady Agnes. "Father, you mustn't trust." Behind him, an ominous presence melted toward them. Sweetness turned to dread within a blink. The figure, no longer just a shadow, but the embodiment of anguish, assembled the courage to relinquish the weapon, leaning into the fragile embrace of clarity. You speak of emancipation, yet all is but night. Isn't that the true burden? And just then, as though the universe answered the unspoken prayers of the haunted past, a tremor surged through the floor beneath their feet. A quicksilver shock reverberated through the air, and the walls groaned like tombs cracking open. What now? Knightley gasped, stumbling against Thomas as the blast of wind pushed the door ajar, flooding the room with a biting chill. "Not what, but who?" Father Brown called, sensing the ruination closing in. The shadows writhed violently as the lights flicked, stuttering against the pulse of the tempest outside. In an instant, he locked eyes with the figure, who stood on the precipice of their salvation and demise. "What have you done? You must end this cycle or be condemned by it. It's not only retribution you seek, but vindication. Break the chains of death and rebirth these legacy deeds impose upon you." But the confrontation erupted as one last mournful cry echoed through the hallway, and the candlestick flickered wildly to life once more, illuminating a dastardly truth. Crumpled letters lay strewn across the floor, blood smeared across their surfaces like promises dashed. For a beat, time fractured. The figures staggered as the weight of their awareness collided, and with horror they turned to the doorway where the storm howled, emptiness hanging in the air like the very blackness of night. Father Brown's breath caught as the vision before him solidified with terrifying clarity. The past rippled anew, reflecting a pattern woven in blood, betrayal, and secrets beyond comprehension. And as the door swung open fully, an unseen hand reached through the mist of calamity to unveil the truth, casting a light over the horrors yet concealed and darker than any storm. But for Father Brown, the greatest storm had yet to break. And in that very moment, before clarity illuminated their path, the thunder crashed once more, heavy with portent. The tragic destiny on the cusp of being revealed and twisted ever deeper into shadows. Chapter 11. The Confession of a Broken Spirit. The thunderclap that echoed through the chamber was not merely a sound, but a harbinger of dread, a prelude to the revelation that hung thick in the air like fog, curling tendrils of fear creeping into every heart. as the room shuddered under the pressure of the storm. The wild flickering of the candles cast dancing shadows upon the blood-stained letters scattered about, silent witnesses to crime and chaos. But louder still were the frantic gasps echoing off the stone walls. Each breath tasted of brimstone, laced with the acrid tang of gunpowder and desperation. And in the center stood Father Brown, his senses sharpened like the point of an edged blade, intent on discerning the truth, nestled amongst terror. "You cannot diminish my spirit with hollow threats," the figure declared, a cryptic smirk inching across their lips as if tasting the power coursing through their trembling fingers, still clutching the cross. "The cross is my penance, as much as it is a weapon. Whose savior am I to be when I am shackled by tradition? Your play-acting offers no defense against blood's heavy price," Father Brown countered, his voice steady, eyes piercing like a lighthouse in the gloom. The panic heightened as a fresh alarum rang from outside, the commotion of the estate's residents filtering through as a distant urgency, a wash of voices rising like an orchestra gone awry. "You hide your motives beneath an elaborate mask of sorrow, clinging to pain like a shipwreck survivor to driftwood. Yet only by renouncing vengeance can you open your soul to understanding." Outside, the rhythmic pounding of rain poured down like the heartbeats of despair, each drop a reminder of the past's relentless grip. Crammed into the corners of that attic, the shadows twisted, revealing fleeting phantoms of family history that loomed just beyond mortal comprehension. A moment's hesitation lay heavy upon the figure as they wrestled between light and dark. The weapon they held quivered, fluctuating between a desperate shield and a call to destiny. "I sought to spark change," they suddenly declared, the fervor in their voice betraying a raw wound eager to bleed. "Those who have hurt you cannot be redeemed. Don't you see? Each family member mired in the same sin, whispering cruelly into the void their age-old grievances." Father Brown's heart ached. In the flares of candlelight, he caught a glimpse of sincerity buried deep in the figure's eyes, tangled among the wrathful embers of envy. "But at what cost? Vengeance binds more tightly than love, my friend. You must wrench yourself free from this cycle, or else choke on its debris." Just then, the heavy door that guarded uncertainty burst open, a gust of wind spiraling disorder in its wake. "There's so much I have to reveal," the figure murmured, eyes wide with darkened clarity. As their voice quaked, fragments of the past glimmered like broken glass, sharp and dangerous. "I thought I knew what it meant to love. I was wrong. Even the most sacred symbols can twist into murderous claws." "I know whose blood stains those letters," Father Brown pressed gently, bearing forth the weight of revelation. Lady Agnes reached too far, and in turn lost track of her beloved. Each word was a knife, carving away at the grudges that cloaked the figure's spirit. But the chill of envy is a dangerous fire to play with, my friend. It can consume you entirely if you do not confront it. Strained silence unfurled like a tattered banner, the wretched truths draped over their shared reality. In the uncertainty that enveloped them, the figure took a step forward, eyes glistening with the fires of confession. "You don't understand. She lived, ever knowing her worth. The light always shone on her, and I was the shadow she never knew existed. I wished to swallow that light, to subdue the envy that tore through me at every family gathering, each moment spent watching her glimmer with her endless charms and affections." Father Brown felt an unsettling presence thrum beneath the surface of their strained exchange. There lay a treacherous mythos spinning in the figure's heart, a willingness to bargain worth with blood. "You cannot allow your weakness to become your excuse," he implored, horror dawning at the possibility of a confession yet to come. "Tell me who you mean. Is it retribution you crave, or is it merely the truth that grapples at your very being?" "As God is my witness, it was not meant to be," the figure shouted, the storm outside nearly pausing at the crescendo of their confession. "It was her. Lady Agnes held the key to my undoing. I found out too late that she toyed with fate itself. The blood, I never meant for it to happen." Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from somewhere in the estate, ricocheting through the air like a shot fired in panic, shattering the remnants of peace. Father Brown's heart jolted, and a sudden realization coursed through his mind like lightning. "You were there. You saw it unfold before you," he gasped, now strung taut with dread, stepping closer to grasp the figure's arm with conviction. "You can still change this fate. Tell them. Tell me of the true events." "No," they cried, wrenching free as fear tinged every syllable. "This household, my name, this legacy of anguish has chained me to these walls. If the truth spills from my lips, I may, too, become what I sought to erase." "Take up your cross and bear it," Father Brown urged, desperation woven through his tone as he stared into those haunted eyes, and in that fleeting moment, it appeared, they teetered on the edge of salvation. And as another clap of thunder tore across the heavens, the figure recoiled, shrinking back into the shadows, desperately searching for an escape from the reality closing in on them. The sense of betrayal and ache swelled as each word did its work, unraveling tightly wound ties to dark destinies yet formless. I cannot, they gasped, and in that instant, the ceiling above splintered with menacing ferocity, and the room trembled, a storm now echoing within their hearts. And with the thunder's last cough, a soul, gathered in tumult, took one final plunge toward darkest reckoning. Fear and fury spilled forth in a brazen confession, leaving Father Brown on the brink of realization and terror as the figure retreated into the collapsing shadows, cloaked in the chaos of the storm outside. "Come back," Father Brown shouted, hands extended against the roaring tempest. "You cannot run from your own shadows." But the storm drowned his voice, and as the candles sputtered low, the figure slipped away, leaving behind a hollow expanse, the silence stretching taut like a drawn bow. And in that breath, Father Brown knew a malignant truth was inescapably unfurling before him. Chapter 12. The Mercy of the Murderer. The anguished howl of the storm outside was quickly eclipsed by a petrifying scream that pierced the air like a shriek of a dying soul, ricocheting through the dimly lit corridors of the manor. Father Brown's heart thudded violently against his chest, each beat a solemn reminder that time slipped away like water through fingers. Somewhere within the stone walls, a truth lingered, swirling like the howling winds that battered the estate. He pushed past, the aura of dread enveloping him, each step forward weighted with urgency as he raced toward the source of that terrible lament. The cadaverous halls of the estate had begun to swallow the flickering shadows cast by the wavering candle flames, the light faltering like the hopes of those who had suffered. It flickered uncertainly, revealing too much and too little all at once. Father Brown clasped the brass doorknob of the library, feeling its coolness seep into his palm, and flung the door open. The sight that met him was harrowing. an overturned chair, books strewn across the floor as if an unseen force had unleashed chaos, and at the room's forefront, the figure of Knightley was kneeling, hands clasped over his head, each shoulder shaking with despair. "Father Brown!" His voice was strangled with anguish, strained yet desperate, a plea for communion wrapped in a cloak of guilt. "It was all a ruse. I lost control, and the darkness, it consumed me." His eyes gleamed wide, mimicking the tempest outside, and on the polished wooden desk, stark against the marriage of chaos and somber furniture, lay the haunting remnants of crumpled letters, a fresh crimson stain betraying the weight of guilt. "Knightley," Father Brown urged, pivoting on his heel to shut the door and close them within a small universe of terror and revelation. "What do you mean? What did you do?" "I thought they held the key, a manuscript left by Lady Agnes herself." Knightley choked, tears spilling like the rain, beating against the window panes. But it only spoke of betrayal, whisperings of blood. "I needed her to pay for what she stole from me. I thought it would be easy, just a warning, but it spiraled." His voice cracked. He clutched his head as if to suppress the thunderous pounding of guilt echoing within. Father Brown's mind raced. Knightley's words, half-mad and desperate, tumbled around like leaves in the storm's wrath. "What did you find? You speak of a warning, yet bring forth chaos. Which blood is spilled?" Outside, the wind howled louder still, shoving mighty gusts against the walls, as if the very estate wished to exorcise the demons within. "I don't know. I only wanted them to feel the sting of betrayal, and yet I found something I didn't expect," Knightley murmured, his voice heavy with burdens that haunted his every syllable. "I never meant for him to suffer. Not like this." Father Brown's eyes pierced through the storm of Knightley's anguish, unearthing intent buried beneath the weight of shame. "Him?" Instinctively he stiffened, every ounce of his being sharpening into the inquiry. Beneath the chaos, could there be a hidden motive, a fractured loyalty perhaps? "Who are you referring to?" "The one she loved." Knightley's hand trembled toward a blood-streaked letter, nearly indistinguishable amid the litter, a ramshackle apology engraved in desperation and disbelief. "Lord Ravenscroft, a man caught within the damned affairs of his family. I hadn't intended for that anguish to spill forth, yet that night I lost my mind amid those pages, my heart twisted by envy. I thought I might reclaim the light she had taken by exposing her lies." The candles flickered again, casting a ghostly glow across the room as Father Brown glanced at the letter. A gentle examination revealed not only the bloodstains, but a secret code sewn into the fabric, a series of initials trapped under the manuscript's cursive. "What do you hide beneath those words?" he whispered, deciphering the letters before him, subtly woven into the fabric of fate itself. The clarity burgeoned as he understood the implications. Adultery, betrayal, and a storm of truths far deeper than their predicament. As he pieced together the threads, the realization struck him like a chill that seeped into his bones. "Knightley, did you see her that night? Did you witness an act, perhaps of attrition or passion?" The figure retched, shame blooming in every syllable. "I saw them. In the garden, hidden amongst shadows. Their laughter, a mockery of my pain. I thought to correct the curse of their mockery, to expose, to unleash their sins upon them." "Your blinding jealousy blinded you to truth," Father Brown countered, shaking his head as understanding raged like the tempest. "Love twisted can only weave heartbreak, but to what end? There lies no honor in vengeance. If their bloom was built on deceit, do we then forge our own in blood? Nobody looks closely enough, Knightley cried, clutching the edges of the desk as the turmoil within reached a fever pitch. Not my family, nor those who sought to protect her. The walls reverberated with the sound of Father Brown's impending realization, pulling him deeper into the web of intrigue and betrayal. Then, with an unsteady resolve, he strode across the room, almost entranced by a dark intuition weaving through the air. And now, the victim is gone, consumed by a history you wish to unravel. Father, I was wrong. I didn't mean for it to happen. Knightley's cries echoed with the storm, a plea against the tide of recognition flooding forth in a surging wave. It can't be true. I had no intent. The darkness made the choice for me. Understanding follows acceptance like a murky tide, Father Brown intoned, leaning in as realization dawned amidst the maelstrom both within and outside. And at this precipice lies a choice: face it or forever remain entrapped by that shadow. Just as Knightley's countenance quivered with the flickering candlelight, an unseen energy swept through the room. The door lurched on its hinges once more, and as the storm billowed against the panes, forcing Father Brown's heart to race, the figure reappeared, a silhouette framed by chaos, the cross clasped too tightly in hand. "Father!" the figure shouted, voice laced with the edges of madness. "You must know the whole truth. What I took from Agnes and what she took from me may unravel us all." Before Father Brown could respond, the echoes of a gunshot thundered through the room, a sound that shattered the delicate dance of fury and sorrow. Knightley's face drained of color, and the manuscript slid to the floor, motionless. As the haze of the storm intensified outside, enveloping the town in somber foreboding, Father Brown turned back toward the door, knowing a greater storm of revelation awaited just beyond the threshold. A secret murderous whisper, the ultimate truth tantalizingly beyond grasp.